Hey everybody, it's John here with the Cloud Bureau, and today we have a video on communication between components in Lightning Web Components for Salesforce. And today we're focused on communication from a child component to a parent component. So when you have a component that instantiates a component within its template, how do we communicate from the instantiated child component back to the parent component? And we'll also talk a little bit about template binding down from the parent component to the child component as well, because that is a best practice when you are passing data from a parent to a child and the child needs to manipulate the value on itself. Then it would essentially communicate an event to the parent to change the value that is passed in through the template binding. So we will take a look at that and talk a little bit just about dispatching basic events in Lightning Web Components. So with that, let's jump in. I'm in a developer edition of Salesforce, and you'll see here that I have just a basic Lightning Web Component where we have an outer component called parent component. That's the white box that you see on the outside, and then a child component that the parent component instantiates in its template. And that child component is in the sort of gray theme in SLDS1. The basic premise here is that when we change this combo box, this is just a select list, we can select a theme. And what's going to happen is the child component is going to communicate that theme to the parent. The parent is going to change its theme to match, and then also pass the theme value for the parent theme back down to the child component for display. Now let's look at what happens in the guts of this. I have a parent component and a child component, and just to walk through the different files in this, for the parent component HTML, we have a sort of an outer div class with theme array. This theme array actually has the SLDS box and SLDS theme default as its default value. And you'll see that here. And then we have that parent component title or header. And then we have a Lightning layout that is, organized the way that you might organize an inner component. And then we have the instantiation of that child component. Now the child component is passing. It has two sort of attributes that we care about. This parent theme is an attribute defined on the child component called parent theme, and it is taking the value of the parent's attribute, which is called theme. And then it's also defining an event handler, which is called onChangeTheme. And basically, when the parent component receives an event called changeTheme, it's going to call the method handleThemeChange. On the JavaScript file, you can see the theme value here. That's what's being passed down to the child. And then you see the theme array, which is what is controlling the theme of the outer parent Lightning Web Component. We then have a simple event handler that's handling the theme change when it receives that event. It's setting the value of the theme to the event detail, and it's setting the value of theme array to a new array that has the SLDS box modifier, and then also the value of this theme. For that child component, very basic again, we have a div that is defined as an SLDS box with its theme of shade, and also the text color is defined as default because we don't want the child component to inherit either the background color or the text color of the parent component when it changes. We have a basic div for our header, and then we have a div that is showing the parent theme value. And the parent theme, you'll see, is an attribute defined on the child, and it corresponds to the theme attribute on the parent Lightning Web Component. And again, that is being passed through the template binding. We then have our Lightning combo box. It's called Select a Theme. There are some options. Its value is this theme, which it's basically defining on the fly. And then we have an onChange handler called handleChange. With this child component, we have this parent theme, which is passed in via API. And then we have a set of theme options, which represent the various theme options in SLDS1. We also have a handleChange event. So basically, when the combo box changes, so when there's a change to that select list and we choose one of the values in this defined list, it's basically going to simply take that detail and pass it into an event. And this is the basics of how to pass an event to a parent. You would call a method called dispatch event. It's called on the sort of outer context, which is this. It takes one argument, which is a custom event, and you can see that we're defining that in the method arguments itself. So we're defining a new custom event. And that custom event, the constructor for it takes 2 arguments as well. So we have the name of our event, you can see is change theme, all lowercase. And then we have a comma, and then we have an object. And in that object, we're defining a detail. And for the detail, we're assigning it the value of the event detail value. So basically, whichever of these values corresponds to the selection that's made. What happens is this event gets dispatched, and it gets passed to the parent component. And the parent component handles this theme change event. And the way it knows to do that is by this definition right here on the child component in the template. You'll see that my event name is change theme. That's the event that it's being handled. And then we've prepended that with the word on. So on change theme, and that's just a standard syntax, we're going to bind that to a function on the parent component, which again is here. That parent component then sets the theme to event detail. That gets passed down to the child. And then the theme array gets modified for that SLDS box and this theme. Okay, important to say that if the parent component had a grandparent component, right, if it were being encompassed, that grandparent component could not handle the same event unless this parent component instantiated a new event and passed it to the grandparent. So events are passed from child to parent, and they stop kind of propagation there. They don't go beyond it. If you need to pass up a chain of components that are being composed, then you have to handle the event and pass a new event to the next component up the chain. All right, let's take a look at how this is working. I have here, you'll remember that the default theme is the SLDS box and then the default value, which is this white background, but I can change it to any of the other themes here, and we'll see that the parent component's background changes, as does the value of the parent theme, which is defined on the child and passed to it through the template binding from the parent. And I can do any number of these. As well as go back to my default value. That is just the basic action of communication from a child to a parent. So to recap that, on the child, we would dispatch an event. We would call the method called dispatch events, sort of inbuilt method. We would pass it in a custom event object. That custom event object would have 2 arguments, the event name, as well as the detail object. And again, we'll show that right here. Calling this method dispatch events, inbuilt method. Here's that event object. Here are the 2 things that we're passing into the constructor for this custom event, the event name and then the detail. The parent, to handle this event, has to have a handler attribute defined when it instantiates that child component. So it's taking the word on, the name of the event, and then binding it to a function that handles that event. That's the basics of it. If you have questions or are struggling with component communication, we're always happy to help here at the Cloud Bureau. But have a great day, and thanks for watching.